I'm not gonna make the quote because I know I'll butcher it and I will make Swifties mad.
It's okay.
But not everybody deserves your energy. Not
Yeah,
everybody, if it's not valued, then why give it freely?
yeah. I'm also going to butcher it, but it's something along the lines of, your energy, your time is, think of it as a luxury item. Not everybody can
Mhm.
afford it. And so
Right.
that's exactly it. Hello and welcome to Splitting Seams. My name is Shannon and I am your host. Today's guest is very special to me. Niki, I have known for a few years now. We've been pretty close for a few years now, and she's actually the reason that I started writing patterns. So when I first designed the Gaia, I did it because I wanted to have a crossbody bag that I just didn't find out there that was making me kind of happy, was checking all my boxes. And so I would post the various Gaias I would make, and Niki would comment on them and was like, write a pattern. You should write a pattern. Pattern, pattern, pattern. And then finally, I just decided to go for it. It was really her encouragement and kind words that really pushed me to do it. Because, like, if Niki knew that I could do this pattern, write this pattern, then I guess I can. And so if she thinks it's worth it, then I guess I should do it. And so I decided to bite the bullet and I did it. And then here we are. So the way that I like to describe Niki is that she's someone who, when you say that someone is a good person, you have this idea in your mind of this person who has a good heart, who's really kind, very helpful, very thoughtful, all those things. The person that you think you're referring to, it's actually Niki. She truly is deep down one of the kindest and nicest people that I know. And not to say that in a way that makes it seem as if she's superficial. She's not. She just truly has a good heart and sees a lot of the goodness in people. And she is absolutely, it's an honor to call her a close friend. I'm spoiled to have her as part of my team for adminning and testing at Not a Threads Co. So I really, really, really appreciate her and everything about her. I'm so glad that she agreed to be on the podcast. I know that she isn't someone who maybe truly thinks that she deserves this space, but she really does. And I was just so happy that she agreed. And so I hope you enjoy the episode. I think that we had a good conversation. We talked about quite a few things when it comes to striking and testing, and again with the work-life balance. I think that journey is always really important in everyone's story. How do you tie in your creative side with your personal side, and what are the things that you kind of had to realize along that way? I think everyone has that journey in their lifetime at some point. And so I just find it very relatable. And I think it's going to continue to come up in essentially every conversation, but I think that's okay too. And so I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hey, Niki.
Hi.
Hi. Can you believe it? You're on the podcast. You did it. We're here. This is
Oh,
exciting.
no. Yes, this is exciting and terrifying and all the things.
But we're doing it afraid, which is the
Yes.
bravest thing that we can do. You and I have known each other for a couple, 3 years now. And so
Yeah.
I know a lot about you. You are on kind of so I learned in the last couple of weeks, maybe month or two, who knows, doesn't matter to me nowadays, but that you can set priority people on your messenger list. And you have made it to my priority list. So you and I
Oh,
are good friends. At least I consider us to be. You're an admin for
yes.
Not a Threads Co. Facebook group. You've been a tester of mine and a good friend for quite a few years now. So I know a lot about you. But for those that don't, it's that awkward time where you have to tell everybody else about you. So here you are on the spot.
Here I am on the spot. I am Niki from Niki Makes. A lot of people aren't even going to know who that is, and that's okay. Um, I'm going to say a lot.
That's okay.
I have been married for over 2 decades, which is mind-blowing to me. My husband and I live in small town Idaho, which If you've ever traveled somewhere at the same time as me, it's going to take me all stinking day to get there.
Yeah.
No matter where. No matter where I'm going for what, it takes all day to travel. Uh, we have a 16-year-old daughter, and I am a homeschool mom. There's ebbs and flows of that, but it's her, my whole life is wrapped up in her schedule these days. But I'm realizing more and more every day that her childhood is finite and
Mhm.
there's only a little bit of time left, so we're embracing it.
Yeah. That's all
I,
you can do.
yeah, I sew strikes for a lot of places. I pattern test for several designers. As time has gone on, I've narrowed those lists down a little bit, but I think most people have probably seen things that I've made posted here and there.
Yeah, I think that, you had said, a lot of people may not know who you are. I think way more people know your work than you probably anticipate, but they may not always know that it's attached to you. You're pretty reserved, but your work speaks for itself. More people are just enamored by the work and the photos and the quality and all that stuff. And over time, they absolutely connect it to you, but there are people who just are like me, who names don't stick, but
Yes,
they
yes.
they would recognize your work anywhere, and so I have no doubt that there are quite a few people who have that experience right now. um so how long have you been sewing bags? I know you've been in the community for quite a while, way longer than me, but I don't actually know when you started sewing or when you started sewing bags.
That's a good question. My dad worked in a sewing machine shop when I was a kid. I didn't sew then. Uh, my mom has, my mom and my grandma always sewed. I did not sew then. One of my grandmas died when I was about 20, and I inherited her sewing machine. I think I made rag quilts for a few friends that were having babies. I didn't do much for a while. My daughter was born when I was about 31, I think.
Okay.
When she was a toddler, I started seeing Pinterest things that I wanted to make for her. And so I I think she might have been like around 3. So about 13 years ago, I got a different sewing machine, a computerized brother sewing machine on sale at Costco.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I used for a long time. And I made those. Like I made things here and there.
Was it the
And
one
then
that everyone gets, the Brothers CS 6000i or whatever? I'm sure I messed that
no,
up.
it was a Costco model. It was only at
Oh,
Costco, and so it was fancy.
oh yeah. I mean, especially for anyone who shops at Costco, you are very loyal to that brand for sure. So I get it.
Yes, yes. Uh, so I made things like I remember there was a good long time where I made fleece capes, and I wanted to make one for my daughter, and so I made one for my daughter, and I said, "Hey, does anybody want one? Because I have enough stuff to make left to make another one." And so somebody bought it from me, and for a long time, that's how I did it. Like I would buy something to make for my daughter and something, sell the extra.
Okay.
And so because I was a stay-at-home mom, we went from two incomes to one income. And so in order for me to enable me to continue with a hobby,
Mm-hmm. You
I
had to
would
fund it.
make one, sell one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like a friend. Oh, I would love one of those for my kid kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I made probably like 100 fleece capes that had manually appliqued designs on the back of them, superhero and superhero masks, and
Mm-hmm. I think that's where a lot of us start, having to fund the hobby. You like this thing, but you don't want to have to keep paying for all these extra supplies. And you'll have extra supplies that you don't necessarily need. So
yeah,
it's kind of like you get to fund it and, make it more space for more stuff. And then,
So yeah.
it's fun too. It's fun once people start wanting the stuff that you're making, you're kind of in that moment, and
Hmm.
it's very inspiring to keep going with that. So I can imagine
Yeah.
how quickly, you ramped up, especially knowing, your quality. So,
Yeah. So then, I think probably 11 years ago, I got an embroidery machine. And I went down that path for a while. I like ping pong from one craft to another. I've done that for years. Bag making is what I've stayed with the longest, but I also have side quests here and there,
mhm,
cup making or various little side things.
mhm.
Um, can't stick with one thing too long, but I do keep coming back to bag making. So I made with the embroidery, I did hooded towels for a while,
Okay.
and then I saw a bag that someone made that had Minnie Mouse on it. It was a design that was made like for the hooded towels, but it was peeking out of the top of a swoon Ethel purse.
Okay. Okay.
And I was like, "What? What is this?" So I joined the swoon group, and then I remember looking through all the posts in the swoon group, and I was like, I remember specifically showing my husband this, and I said, "Look at this bag. Like, I can never I can't even fathom making a bag that looks that professional. Like, look at that bag. That
Mhm.
does not look like somebody made it." And I bought all the supplies to duplicate this Minnie Mouse bag. She said where she got everything. Most of it was from Joanne. I got the black vinyl. I got this print. I had all the things to do the applique, and I never made the bag. I don't know. I decided to make my first Ethel from, I think it was Ethel. I made it all out of quilt cotton. It's still floating around the house somewhere. My daughter used it as a doll diaper bag for a while. I never actually used the bag. Um, I don't, but I made it and
Right.
I
I feel like
accomplished the thing.
so many of us start out that way in bag making, where it's like we're in awe of the fact that it can be done. So we just need to prove that it can be done. And then we go on
Yeah,
and start making the things we actually want to make versus like starting out making the thing for ourselves that, technically like the fifth project down the line should have been what should have been our number one, but it's never our number one project. It's more of like make it exist first, try to figure out
right.
if you can physically do it.
I think I was with that first one, I think I was terrified of the vinyl.
Yeah.
It took a while to work up to the vinyl. I don't think I ever even had a Teflon foot for that
Mm.
machine, so it wouldn't have worked anyways. In hindsight, I now know.
Yeah.
But I bought all the things for it.
I have to press pause for 1 second because Oliver's getting ready to shred my curtains. So,
Oh, sweet.
no, he just wants to get in the cubby behind the vinyl rolls, and the curtains are closed, but he, as you heard earlier, cannot handle whatever's happening today. He needs to be all up in it.
Yes.
So I need to go and remove him. I'll be right back. I say hi to Oliver. He has been removed from the premises, so we can resume.
So I was in the swoon group and I frequented it just admiring all the things that people made. That was really the only pattern designer I knew of at the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I saw someone do a live video in the swoon group and I watched it. I watched the whole thing that night and it happened to be Lauren Mormino. She did a live of Annette
Okay.
and I just was totally taken in watching her. She did the video and she referred to I think she referred to a pattern one of her patterns. I think at the time she had one pattern and her video got removed the next day by the admins of that group. And so she said, "Hey, I have a group here that I used for something else. Come here, I'll sew it live again." So that's when people started joining, so whatever.
Oh, okay.
So she had used the group for, I think, in-person classes that she had done.
Okay.
And so that was like the birth of the So Whatever group that we now know.
I didn't even know that. So that's a good bit of
So
trivia.
I was there for like the day
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that
You
was
were part
born
of
as
it.
we know it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just like just admiring. And I've been sewing I've been sewing bags since then. I think I sewed a net because she said, "Treat yourself." And
Yeah.
I did make myself in a net and I did keep it and I did use it
Very nice. I
and
think
it's all gone from there.
so many people start with swoon. So for those that maybe are coming into the bag making world a little bit later on, swoon is now no longer called swoon. I think I don't even remember what the name has changed to, but it's been absorbed by another company. But for those of us who kind of came into the bag making world, maybe, I mean, it was still very active when I came in, and I came into it very early 2019. And so at that point, it was still very big, but it was kind of like the real basis, the real heart of the bag making community. And it had kind of all
Hmm.
of the basic and classic bag designs that we all kind of have seen out and about. We've seen people carry. And then, it was just the most, everyone knows all the names you're saying for the bag names, the patterns. I can immediately picture them in my head.
Yep.
And so many of us can, because it's such a staple. But things happen. And so now that company has been absorbed by somebody else, Mrs. H or something like that.
Yeah, I think
I,
so.
I'm horrible with names, but anyway, it's so funny because so many of us started out with swoon patterns, and we
Hmm.
still, we may not sew them up all the time now. I mean, I still sew up the Lola on an annual basis, but
Well,
um there's just so many that we all kind of know and love, and holds a special place in our heart because we all started from humble beginnings, with swoon patterns, and so many of us designers as well, and we've gone so far since then. So that's pretty cool.
yeah.
And so since the start of So Whatever, you've been essentially you just kind of took off with that from from a bag making perspective.
So I started with Swoon and then I saw the Necessary Clutch Wallet and oh goodness, I took off with that one.
Yeah.
I took off with that one. At one time, I tried to look back and see how many I'd made because I had pictures. I probably nearly 400 of them. I mean, and they were all quilt cotton. Oh. So when you see one later that's like more interfacing than fabric.
That's just, I mean, it is what it is. But until that point, they are absolutely gorgeous. Everything you make with
Hmm.
quilt cotton, I've been carrying around modified Aries since this time last year, and it has quilt cotton. And it honestly has held up really well, but I've also like I barely go anywhere. It's not like I'm like shoving it in and out of a bag all the time like you would a wallet and everything, but I keep wanting to take a picture of it because the basis of the fabric is white and it has colorful elements on top of it, and I keep wanting to share it and be like, it's okay to use it. It's okay if it's going to last you 2 years, until
Yeah.
then it's gorgeous, but once it gets a hole in it, it's going to be bye. But until then, it's held up really well. So I'm sure, knowing you, those wallets lasted a lot longer than you probably expected them to.
Yeah, that's true. So with that, with making all the NCWs, I upgraded my sewing machine and I managed to get what I now know was an absolute steal of a deal. And it's what some people call the semi-industrial, which is just really a good heavy duty domestic.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that one served me well up until last year. I didn't upgrade. Most people assume that I had an industrial long before that, but I upgraded to an
Mhm.
industrial last year.
Yeah. Yeah. You got yourself a really nice fancy cylinder arm.
I do. Oh, I love her. She's that
Mm-hmm.
cute.
But you still use your domestic occasionally, right?
Occasionally, yeah.
Yeah.
It serves its purpose.
For sure, for sure. So what you had was kind of, I think I have seen you comment, you've had something that was essentially the equivalent of the HD9, the Janome HD9 or something like that.
So it's equivalent to the step below that. I don't know how, but it has the Singer name on it. It was a Singer 1300p,
Okay.
which is exactly like looking at the Janome 1300. No, it's Janome 1300p. I don't remember exactly, but it's I looked at the machine side by side. I looked through the owner's manuals online, and like literally the only thing different was the name on it.
Okay.
Like all the instructions, everything was word for word the same. Page numbers.
Wow.
So, and I got it for like $400 when the Janome was over a
So,
thousand at the time.
so
So
that lasted you how many years do you think? 10, 8, 7? I don't know.
8, yeah, about 8.
Wow. I mean,
And
hey,
I just
you
used it
can't beat
again the
that.
other day. So
Yeah, you
yeah,
can't beat
it's
that.
I I I made out with that one. That was a great deal.
So you sold your wallets, you sold. So once you started sewing up the wallets, did you essentially leave the rest of that stuff behind? The embroidery, the capes, the kind of other
Yeah,
accessory things?
I'm still doing like gifts here and there, but that's that was that. My
Mhm.
embroidery machine, poor thing, is neglected and sad, but it only gets used like once or twice a year now.
Yeah. And so you sold, are you still selling bags? Are you still selling wallets? I know that you kind of like do gifts and stuff now and then, but you essentially stopped
A
taking
little
custom
bit. Like
orders.
I have a ready to ship sale like once every month or two in my Facebook group, and that's about it. I don't I did custom orders for a while, and so like my custom order list got so out of control.
Hmm.
And it got to the point where I felt like my time was not my own. If I had some spare time, these people have been waiting months. I need to
Yeah.
get their stuff done. And I jokingly call myself the slowest sewist because you would think as time goes by that I would get faster, but I feel like I get slower because I get more detail focused
Hmm.
and do the things to do those fine detail
Yeah.
things
Yeah, you don't want to ever
that
feel like you've
just take.
stepped down in quality ever. You only want to increase it as you go, which with that comes more time, more dedication to all of those intricate details here and there,
Yeah.
every stitch, all that stuff.
So when somebody asks how long does that bag take to make, my answer is always 2 days. It'll
That's
take me
fair.
2 days.
Yeah, it's pretty much always like cut, prep, interface, and then by the time I'm done that day, I'm probably ready to not do anything for the rest of the day. Like, I don't want to sit down and sew. I'd rather sew all day that next day and hurry up and finish it. Hurry up and finish it by the end of the day, and then I'll feel better about it. But
Yeah.
that's my process there. So, do you think that you're going to keep selling bags, or is what are you selling? Are you making things to sell, or are you mainly selling like prototypes now, strikes, things like that? Or I don't want to say
Yeah.
prototypes, but like testers,
Testers and strikes, that's pretty much it. Occasionally a fancy will strike me and I want to make this.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully somebody will buy it. Things people haven't been buying lately. I think that's kind of a universal thing at the
Yeah.
moment, at
Yeah.
this point in time. Um, and I don't know what it is, but when I make something, there was a time when everything I made sold out like the minute that I had it ready to ship. And now things have been sitting for a little
Yeah.
bit, and when they sit there, they flip me off.
Yeah, that's the term that, yes, I know that term. You have said that many a time. Um,
Like the longer it sits there, it's like, nobody wants me.
mhm.
So
And
I don't like to be in that place.
yeah, I mean, and that's tough too. I mean, like, I don't sell as many bags nowadays. I have maybe 1 to 2 sales a year. I had my first one, so we're having this at the day before Thanksgiving, and so I had my first sale a couple weeks ago for the year, and one
Oh,
bag
wow.
didn't sell, which was totally fine. Like I never expect to sell all my bags, so it's really I'm happy when it does happen. But granted, I only put 9 bags up for the all of 2025. But I have one bag that's sitting there, and I think it will flip me off for probably the remainder of 2025. And I will probably, everyone is going to hate to hear this, but I'll probably cut it up at the end of the year if it doesn't sell.
Yeah,
I don't like stuff to sit there.
I looked at a bag yesterday as I was tidying up, and I was like, it might be time to cut the hardware off of you.
Yeah, I mean, so many people hate to hear that, and they're like, no, 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 like you can gift it, or I could absolutely gift it. I could absolutely try and let it sit there or lower the price or do whatever, over time. But for me, I'm like, I mean, I don't personally, I created it. I have the power to just not sell it if I don't want to. It's okay. Like, so many people get all up in arms if they feel like you've wasted material, and I don't see the waste in it. I think it's still a waste if it's sitting there and I hate it and it's not selling, versus just having the power to salvage what I can from it and move on with my day. And I think there's a lot of power in that. So over time, do you think that it's because you took on more of this like tester sort of striker? Also, things got way more busy, I'm sure, and way more involved with your daughter's schooling and things like that. Do you think like that was the progression of maybe not making to sell as much, or like kind of turning off the custom orders? What do you think caused that kind of dip in sales for you?
I think I think it's a common thing with just the state of the world right now.
True.
I do hear that it's common
Yeah.
that people aren't buying things that aren't as necessary right now, and
Yeah.
the things that I sell are not necessary.
Same.
So but I do think I do have a lot of requests for custom still, and because I have more time now, a little bit more time, like I said, I've pulled back on the amount of testing that I do and
Yeah.
the amount of strikes that I do. I found that I give myself fully to people.
Mhm.
It's just part of who I am. Like if I can help you, I will absolutely help you.
Mhm.
And I pour myself out fully, and I'm learning that not everybody appreciates that, and not everybody deserves that level from me.
Right.
But what I was noticing is that I was pouring myself out fully for people, and then I was giving my family what was left over.
Hmm.
And sometimes that wasn't much. If
Yeah.
I have this pattern test this week, and oh shoot, I signed up for 2 pattern tests that ended up overlapping, and then I've got a strike to do, and everything takes me 2 days, and they've all got this deadline within a day of each other, and sorry, there's cereal in there if you want it for dinner.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's tough. And it's tough when you know that there are these people in these businesses, when you have signed yourself up for so much because you want to help them and you know that they're going to appreciate it, but you also are actively in that moment knowing the toll it's going to take on you and your family. And so then it makes it harder and harder just to get the job done, but then it gets harder and harder to sign up for that again and again and again.
Yeah,
You just learn over time that you have to not pour so much of yourself out all the time. You have to leave something in there. You can't pour it all out. And
that's true.
I have, we've been friends for a few years, so I've been able to kind of watch you get to that point as well. But I'm also one of those people that, quote unquote, taxes you in those ways too. I rely on you for adminning the Knotted Threads Co. group. I rely on you as a tester when those things happen, but you know, not everyone else knows, but I'm also very adamant about pushing it on anyone who ever helps me that, like, if you can't do it, it doesn't matter. Like, don't do it. Like, it's okay. It's never a big deal. But I understand also that as a people pleaser, you know, it's really hard to say that you can't do it, to make that admission, you know, to somebody else that is relying on you. But to watch you get to that point and do that with various businesses and various, you know, commitments over time has been really awesome, just to see you value your time and your family. You know, not that you didn't value it before, but to kind of follow up and follow through with that value, which is not always easy to do.
You know, if I commit to doing something, I'm not going to leave somebody hanging. If I commit to do a pattern test, I'm going to give it my all, because there's a designer that's counting on my feedback. Well, okay. There are some designers that are counting on my feedback.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about that. When you're done with saying what you're saying, I want to talk a little bit about pattern testing. So we're going to go back into that in just a bit.
We'll circle back.
Yes.
Yes. So, and also when I'm going to do strikes. So not everybody knows what strikes are. In the custom fabric, custom hardware, in that realm, the business owner or the host will order samples, and they will send them out to a team of people that they've selected that sews something up and does promotion for them. They often pay more for that because they're buying a small batch, and plus the shipping for that small batch. That's an investment from their business, and they're sending that out usually free of charge or for the cost of shipping, whatever. And so once I've received that, I have committed, and I'm not going to, barring some emergency, I'm not going to leave somebody's business hanging, because that's just not cool.
Yeah.
That's not me. I realize that it is a privilege to be on these various strike teams and testing teams, but it is work.
It's a lot of pressure.
Sure.
It's a lot of pressure to hit a deadline, to make something that is worthy of sharing with a limited amount of material. Striking, it can be fun, especially when you're really excited about a material that you're getting. It can also not be fun if you just kind of signed up to strike this quote unquote round and you're not really sure what you're getting. And then you get this material and you're like, I would have never bought that in a million years. What am I going to make? So, you know, people who are creative people, you know, a lot of us thrive on that creative freedom. And so there's a restriction involved with any kind of striking or testing that also puts a lot of pressure just from the fact that you have boundaries to work within. You have a time frame limitation on the amount of materials and all that stuff. And so it is tough. It can be fun though. It really can be fun.
Yes, for sure. That's one area that I have, like I said, I've scaled back, because I realized, like, I'm spending all this time sewing a bag that may or may not sell for a roll of vinyl, for the low price of a roll of vinyl, and a discount that I may or may not use.
Exactly. And so when it comes to striking, a lot of people want to be a striker because there's like a kind of like bragging rights to that, right? You're like, "Ooh, I was selected. They liked my work enough. Like I'm going to get to do all this striking." Like it's very flattering. But when you take
100%.
10 steps back and you look at the big picture here, you're looking at the value of the material that they sent you. Take that, but then also calculate in the value of the materials you have to add to that to make a product. So you're investing just as much sometimes as what this company is, but then also your time. When you factor in your time, you have blown the value of that the materials they sent you out of the water as far as your investment, then now it's extremely uneven. Still can be fun. And there have been times where I have done striking where I absolutely got a return on my investment because of the amount of freaking Lord of the Rings maps debossed material from Olivia. Okay. Like, absolutely, I have gotten a return on that investment, but that is not always the case. And so it is hard, to understand that. But then, like, again, if you're not going to buy it, then what's that discount for? And so I think many of us who have done striking get to that point where you kind of realize that, well, people are like, oh, well, you save money. Well, I wouldn't have bought it anyway. So there's no saving at that point. It's kind of like those, well, if you buy this, you get X amount of dollars off sort of coupons. Well, it's like, well, I wasn't going to buy anymore. So I'm not saving anymore. I'm just spending less. And so it's a perspective shift too. Not to say that we're not grateful for these companies. It's just to say that there's a point in which we start to value our time and our energy and the space in our freaking sewing room a little bit more than the clout that is striking for a company, for sure.
There's one company that I was striking for a good while, and I still love the company. I appreciate that they wanted me on their team, and I am grateful for the time that I was there. But I did have to take a step back because I was like, they were doing rounds so close together, and the posting commitments, 'cause you need to post a X number of times throughout the pre-order. And I just got to the point where I was like, when was the last time I purchased something?
Yeah.
They send me stuff, they send me these things, but I'm not using the perk of the discount at all. And so I'm getting a yard of cotton every time, but I have this growing stack that I'm not using. And I'm out of space, and this is a big time commitment for me each month. Like, I mean, it's a job at that point because every single week I have posts that I need to make for this round or the next round. And I just had to say, okay, let's pull back here because this is no longer, while like I said, I still buy from them occasionally, but it wasn't equaling out for me anymore. And so I took a step back. And the same with pattern testing. Um, there was a time for a really long time that I tested every single opportunity that I had for multiple designers at the same time. And I am now my rule of thumb is, would I buy that pattern? Because if I wouldn't buy it, then what's the point of investing my time in a pattern that I may or may not ever use again?
Right. Yeah. And so, just to circle back to some of the stuff about the striking and, not feeling that it's, as valuable for you, there's also the recognition that, Lauren mentioned this in her episode about how there are people that see your influence on the community and they just kind of want to have you in their pocket because you get to sell patterns or material for them, right? And so sometimes it's nice because you could have something like an affiliate link, but other times you don't get anything additional out of that, but you are in their pocket. And I think it's also recognizing that too. And, your work it's just so pristine. Your pictures are great. We're all big Niki fans. Everyone I know is a big Niki fan. Okay.
Oh,
you are goals for me. So, and, I was one of those people who I was like, I don't necessarily want to have you in my pocket, but I valued, I don't know if you remember when I asked you to be an admin for me, when I reached out to you, my thing was, I just want someone that I know is going to answer questions like I would, so
Yeah.
that an extension of, I know how your brain works and I appreciate that. But I'm one of those people who saw the value in you and wanted to use you for my own benefit. As maybe as bad as that sounds for my own self, like that's the reality of it, of people who are influential in our community. And so I think that is so healthy of you to recognize over time, one, that you have that influence and what that influence means for you when you're giving it to other people, and how much it taxes you personally and professionally, And I just want to applaud you on that, because, in my Nico episode, I talked about how my bubble was small, I expanded it, and now it's small again. And since that episode released, I've heard from various people telling me like, oh, that's the same experience that I've had, and I found that to be a very healthy way. You kind of start out, you're in all of everything you want to grow, you grow a whole bunch, and then you learn, oh, this was way more than I actually wanted. And then you pull back
Yep.
in. And so it seems like you had this similar experience. You kind of just focus on those that are special to you, that value your time and things like that. And so,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people really want to be strikers, but I don't really know if they get to understand that side of things, that sometimes it's just a bit more than you signed up for. Although it's fun, although we love these businesses and all these products, sometimes it's just nice being a customer, and we can still love all of it just as much, but we don't, and we can just pay the normal price and it's okay. It's
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Sometimes it's like when I have sales and I tell people, don't just buy the pattern because it's on sale. You spend more money that way, like just buy it with intention, and I think that's,
Right.
don't be wooed by a discount, but also if you want that opportunity and you have the opportunity, seize it, see if it's for you, and then kind of move on.
Yeah.
But when it comes to testing, so that's something that, I get asked about a lot as a designer. I'm sure you've been asked about it a lot because you have tested for so many people. You've been very prolific. And so a lot of people have wanted you on their team, not only because they see your skill, they see your great photos, and they see how you talk about things and, how you give people advice and stuff. That was my big thing. I read your comments. I saw how you interacted. I saw how you sewed. I was like, I like this brain. Okay. So people want that on their team because, it's a great thing to have. It's a great mind to have, helping you perfect a pattern. But there's a lot of things about testing that people kind of don't really know about. They kind of know the big picture of like designer designs bag, designer types up pattern, designer sends pattern in its almost finished form to testers. Testers tell them everything that's wrong with it or tell them that it's good to go. Designer sells pattern, testers promote it, end of cycle, new cycle begins.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to it than that. And so I want you to maybe talk a little bit about testing and some of your experiences in there. And so do you have tips that you can share, or like, kind of any experiences that you have found to be common designer or uncommon experiences? And I want to preface all of this with this very long-winded question by saying that you are an active tester for me. You are on my team. And so please, as we always know that I'm going to say something like this, just because I'm the one asking this question doesn't mean that you need to filter any of it to appease my ego. Okay. It's okay if I do something wrong. It's okay if you want me to do something different. I would love that feedback. Okay. So there, I said it. Now it's your turn.
Okay. So I have learned over time that some people want their pattern tested and some people want their pattern promoted. Those are not the same thing.
Yeah.
I had one designer reach out to me and ask me to test her pattern. She showed me what it was, and I said, sure, I could do that. And she said, okay, it releases tomorrow.
That is Wow.
Do we think that she wanted it tested or did she want it promoted? Of course
Right.
she wanted it
Right.
promoted.
Right.
She just wanted my promo.
Yeah.
And at that time I just did it. But now I would, I guess it depended on if I wanted a free copy of the pattern.
Yeah. Well, I
But
would have guffawed. Pardon me?
it was a little pouch. It was a cute pouch, and I've made quite a few of it. But yeah, that not everybody. I can't imagine what it's like as a designer because you pour weeks or months, in some cases, of time into creating the pattern and perfecting it, and then you hand it over to people, and you get to sit and wait for them to pick it apart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not fun because
It's not.
you're like, I know what I meant there. Why don't you know what I meant there?
Mm-hmm.
And me as a tester, I'm going to come up with any kind of question that somebody could have. Like I want to think if I didn't have the experiences that I have. I mean, I know that I need to notch around this curve, but I don't want to just do that if the pattern doesn't tell me to do that
Yeah.
because somebody else might not have that experience. And
Mm-hmm.
so I try to think of any questions that somebody could have and so that it can be fine-tuned. And some people are more receptive to that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are like, the pattern is the pattern. So can you do it? How's it like? If you do what's written here, will you get the bag or
Mm-hmm.
get the item? That's all they're interested in. And some people want to fine tune and do receive the feedback. And so I have learned to temper things with some people more than others. I will say like not to flatter you at all, but you do receive feedback better than any designer that I've worked with.
Thank you.
Um, as hard as it is, because I feel like I need to preface it anytime there's new people on a design team or I'm new on or not on a design team, but if I'm new on a testing team, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna come across so nitpicky. I'm sorry, I'm not, but here's all my feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's tough too because like I mean, you have been privy to the behind the scenes.
Mhm.
You know, how long it took me to perfect the lining of the Rowena. You were there in real time when I came up with the connector for the Rosie, you know, like you got to watch all those things happen. So, you know, you're sharing in that joy. And I have to imagine you're also sharing in a bit of the cringing that happens during the few weeks of testing for each one of those patterns. And you're like, ah, that must have hurt. But you know,
Yeah.
it is a necessary evil. And I can say as a designer, and this is my opinion, but if you can't take that feedback from your testing team, you're never going to be able to take that feedback from your customers. And so it's important to me that as a business owner, I grow and I learn and I improve over time. But the only way I'm going to do that is if I'm receptive. And I know that my customers also want to see me grow. There are people who have been like, I see your pattern progression, you know, of like the little things you fine tune and just the formatting and things like that. And those things are important to me. I know that they're not as important for other designers as well. I think that if you're charging a certain amount, you should probably care about some of those things, but that's maybe me getting up a little bit on my soapbox there, so that's fine. But I have heard from you telling me before that there are designers that you can get on their test team and you'll say, I did 1, 2, 3 in order like you told me to, and I did not get those results. And they're telling you, you're wrong. You didn't do that. As a tester, that has to be really frustrating And so, you know, when you're put in a situation like that, like how do you respond to the designer in that way? Do you just say, all right, fine, I told you what I did, you want to take it? Or do you push harder? Or what do you do in that situation?
I've done both. Um, there are times when I feel really strongly about something that I'll be like, can I please, like, this seam allowance? If I am sewing A to B to C at this seam allowance, I'm not going willy-nilly on the seam allowance. I did it 3 times. I even went so far as to get a ruler and draw the seam allowance on there, and it's still coming out an eighth of an inch smaller than it should be.
Mm-hmm.
An eighth of an inch may not matter to some people, but when you're sewing 3 pieces together and it's supposed to end up, the interior
Mm-hmm.
is supposed to end up the same size as the exterior, or whatever the case may be, an eighth of an inch can matter
Mm-hmm.
in your final product. Like I am very detailed, and seam allowance does matter.
Yeah.
And so there are times when I'll push, and there are times when I will say, I did what I can do. I
Mm-hmm.
gave you the information, and that's what you do with it is your business.
Right. Yeah.
Literally, it's your business.
And you've talked about how other designers, where you also just kind of know that it doesn't really matter how hard you press either. You're just not going to get through to them. They're, by the time that you get the pattern, they're not willing to make changes to it. They are like, I know that it works for the most part with what I've presented to you. And so I'm not going to go rephotograph the pattern, or I'm not going to go redo this whole process or change this whole thing because one or two testers have told me that it's good enough, you know. And I don't know how I feel about the whole good enough thing, but I think there are limits for that. But that's also got to be tough dealing with designers who, like, again, that goes back to the essentially they want you to strike their pattern. They don't want you to test their pattern, um,
Right.
which is tough too. To be on a to feel like you were brought on for your knowledge and then have your knowledge ignored.
Yeah. There have been people that have been like, well, it worked for me, so I'm not sure what your issue is. And I, at that point, I mean, there, what really can I do?
Right.
I've
Yeah.
I've given you my best effort. My goal is that you don't have somebody else ask this question later.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't this come out the right size, or why didn't this
Right.
fit there?
Right.
Whatever. My goal is that uh, as a designer you don't get that feedback from somebody else, from one of your customers.
Yeah.
So if I've if I know that I've given it my best effort, then that it is what it is.
So there's also the experience that some people have had where it's not so much the designer themselves that are kind of pushing back on your feedback, but sometimes it's other members of the tester team that kind of, I don't want to say gang up a little bit, but they kind of get on, you know, the side of the designer before the designer even gets the chance to do that. And they kind of like shame you a little bit for your negative feedback. And so we already know that some designers don't receive feedback very well. They're maybe a little bit resistant to that. They don't necessarily want your feedback. They just want you to promote it and strike it essentially. But then, you know, again, you have these team members that, you know, maybe kind of create a slightly hostile testing environment. Have you experienced that yourself?
Too bad, really. I think that there are, like we've established, it is an absolute privilege to be chosen. It's an
Mm-hmm.
honor to be chosen. Um, it is, and I that's not lost on me. But there are some people that kind of fangirl
Mm-hmm.
over the opportunity to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, no designer is infallible.
Right. We're all human.
Yeah. And like the seam allowance thing. If you're sewing on an industrial that doesn't have seam allowance markings, then how accurate are your seam allowances, when you sew when it worked for you?
Right.
I mean, that's, that was
Mhm.
one experience that I
Mhm.
had. And so I was like literally I drew it. I wrote, I made a line and I sewed right on it. Like
Right,
I
right,
know that my
right,
seam allowance was accurate.
right. I will die on this hill. Thank you.
I know what I know. Do with it as you will.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I haven't had anyone be like overly hostile with me.
That's good.
And I just wouldn't choose to engage if they were. It's
True.
not
It's
worth
not
it.
worth it. No, it's not worth your time,
So
your energy.
arguing with anyone online about anything is rarely productive. So
Right. Yeah. And so the other part of testing is that for many, we talked about the return on investment for striking, but the return on investment for testing is many times even less. It's way more strict of guidelines. So for those that don't know, when you test, essentially you get it depends on the designer, but you'll get a close to finished version of the pattern. Like there are going to be various details that just aren't completed yet. So there'll be like blank pages maybe here and there. A picture needs a retake. Pattern pieces aren't fully done as far as all the little details and stuff. But you get that, and then you're supposed to follow the design or the pattern absolutely step by step. You're supposed to cut everything exactly as it's done. You're supposed to do every process as it's done and all that. And so it's a very, very strict sort of process. You have most of the time a pretty short turnaround time. You have to provide all your own materials, and there are some, and I'm not shaming any other designer for this, but there are some designers that essentially only offer you the free pattern in exchange for that. So a less than $15 item in exchange for all of that work. And you have to promote, right? And so they'll
mhm.
take all of your edits, all of your revisions, all the problems that you found, implement that into a product, and then they get to take that product and then they get to sell it forever. And so they got to get all of that work out of you for less than $15 per person, which honestly, that's the value of what it's worth. It's not the cost of them. That's not what a designer paid for you to have. They
Yep.
gave you the value of that item. That's two different
Right.
things. So I pay my testers, you know that. I
Mhm.
also pay my admins. I call them end of year bonuses, but like I very much value your input. When I design a bag, I try to design to Niki standards. Would Niki like
Hmm.
this? I keep that in my mind all the time. Would this make Niki happy or would this make Niki mad? Okay, if this makes Niki mad, we don't put it into the pattern. We redo that. We don't make
You make
Niki
it
throw
sound
her
like I
bag.
get mad at things, but I don't throw
You
my
do.
bags.
You throw bags across the room. I've seen it in person.
That's like maybe the only time I've ever done that.
I don't believe you.
I might get mad at them, but that's more like it's not doing what I wanted it to do. I don't even, what was I trying to do when I threw the bag? I don't
There was
remember.
something with you were sewing up the Rosie at Lauren's kind of testing of the studio in December of 23. And I don't remember what you were
I
doing.
wasn't,
Oh, you weren't catching the
uh,
bottom of the pocket trim.
mhm. Yes, that was it. I really forgot about it because I honestly don't throw it often. Um,
And it was
but
because of
that, yeah,
the skinny foot and the pressure.
yeah, because I did it like 3 times and I'm like, it's
Mm-hmm.
perfect on this side and it is not caught on the other side. What the heck is going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I don't get mad at bags that often.
That's
I
okay if
might
you
say,
do.
why are we doing it like this?
There has been, I forget where we were, and of course we're not going to mention the pattern, but you were like, Shannon, if you ever put this in one of your patterns, I can picture where we were in the design. So that is an inside joke that everybody else has to be frustrated about, but it is what it is. But
Now I'm
so
gonna wonder what it is.
don't worry, I'll tell you. I'm not going to tell the masses, but I'll tell you. Everybody else has to suffer on that one. I'm sorry. It is what it is.
Okay.
But I keep that in mind with you when I'm designing because I just appreciate, your mind. But again, like I pay my testers because I think it's really important that your time is valued. There's no way I can pay for every hour you spend testing and sewing and the investment of the hardware that you put in there or the materials or any, but I can help with something. I can help kind of try and offset those costs. And that's my goal when I pay testers. But I also treat it like a transaction, and not everyone does that. But so but my big goal is so that you don't feel like I took advantage of you and your willingness to do all. That's my big picture goal for anyone that does anything for me. I don't want you to feel like at some point I took more of you than I was willing to give you. So, but you
And it
have,
is appreciated.
thank you. I'm glad to hear that. You know, that's my big goal. I just have a guilty conscience, so I need to make sure that I don't encourage that on my own side of things. But I really do appreciate it. And I hope that you and Maria and all of my testers just understand that it's really important to me. But, you know, you've been in this community for a long time, and you have worked with various companies for either striking or testing and all that. Do you feel like there are times in your experience where you have been taken advantage of? And I also want to add another preface to this by saying we've been I don't want to necessarily talk all about the negative experience that we've had, but I think that so many people tend to look at all of these experiences with rose-colored glasses, assuming that it's going to be just happy hunky-dory the whole time. But I also think it's important that people know that, you know, we're normal people. We both found ourselves in these situations, and they could very much find themselves. So it's kind of like, I think it's a good idea that keep your rose-colored glasses on, but also just remember that these things can happen to you in the back of your mind. So again, I don't want it to be totally negative. I don't want people to think that we're just focusing on all the negatives. I just think that these stories are worth telling too, you know?
Yeah. No, if I would say, I don't know if I would go so far as to say taken advantage of. Um, I would say that there have been times when I realized that I was not valued.
So you differentiate the two. So you
I
don't
do.
think that the owners or the business
Maybe I need
owners.
to.
So
Maybe I
that's
need to.
my thought process is of like if they took more from you because they saw your value, right? But they didn't give you a return on that value, or they didn't acknowledge that value. Do you think that that's somebody who has the understanding that they're getting more than they're giving?
I think I'm going to choose to believe that it wasn't like that.
That is very fair. That's a very
Um,
That's where you and Lauren's minds are like very parallel. And then there's Maria and I over there who are like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know,
no,
that's fair.
no, no. I am going to choose to believe that when I realized that I was not valued, then I altered my expectations.
Okay. Okay. And so when you lowered your expectations, I'm not going to say alter, you didn't raise them, you lowered them. That's okay. Um, I'll be the mean person. I'll take that on. I'm good at that. It's okay. But when you lowered your expectations for how they would treat you, which is essentially, you know, what would happen in a situation like that, what did, you know, how do you think that that impacted your future dealings with other people in the community? Do you think that you were more guarded, or did you just kind of allow them to be that person and just still kind of have these rose-colored glasses on for the new people?
I think that I'm probably a bit more guarded. I'm not going to make the quote because I know I'll butcher it and I will make Swifties mad.
It's okay.
But not everybody deserves your energy. Not
Yeah.
everybody, if it's not valued, then why give it freely?
Yeah. I'm also going to butcher it, but it's something along the lines of, you know, your energy, your time is, you think of it as a luxury item. Not everybody
Hmm.
can afford it. And so
Right.
that's exactly it. And so I kind of like, I'm asking all these questions because I have watched you over the last, 5 years as, yes, 5 years. As like I've watched you from afar. I've seen you be a striker. We were fellow strikers before you came on my team and before we came close. And I think we fangirled from afar, but I kind
Yeah.
of watched you being a part of these various companies along the way. And, I see that so many of us have done the same thing of the small bubble, big bubble, small bubble. And I think that it's when people who haven't been involved in striking or testing or things like that in the community, not everyone realizes that a lot of that shrinking of the bubble comes from like maybe less than desirable experiences. Not everyone in the community is going to treat you well, but there's a lot. What happens is that you kind of just saturate your bubble, right? So you just pick all the people that you found that bring you joy and you kind of stick with that. And so even though these processes that we go through, these experiences that we go through that kind of stink a lot and shrink our bubble back down, what we end up with is such a wholesome, wonderful little bubble that we have that we surround ourselves with. And so yes, it stinks to kind of go through these things. It's great to have all these experiences. It feels really good to kind of go through this roller coaster of an experience through this community. At the same time, when we get where we are now, I think that we're pretty grateful for the people that we have, and and all of those experiences, good or bad, and we just learn from them. But I think that the whole being guarded, I would like people, if they're entering into our sewing community right now as a whole for the first time, or into these opportunities kind of early on in their sewing career of sorts, that you kind of enter with that guarded thought process of like, this isn't going to always be cupcakes and rainbows. Okay, sometimes it will, but it's not always going to be that way. And for someone like you who has such a big heart and who sees the good in everyone all the time. So in the intro, which I haven't recorded yet, but I already know what I'm going to say, but one of the things that I will have mentioned is just kind of how I view you as one of the truly most good people I've ever met and I've ever known. Like deep down, you have to your core, you are, the phrase that I use, which I'm probably repeating myself from the intro, is that when somebody says, oh, this person's like a really good person, that person that you think you're talking about, the kind of human, the kind of heart, the kind of mind that you are referring to is actually you. It's actually like you are the role model for what I consider to be a good person. I have told Alex so many times that you are the best person that I know. And so like we all strive to be as nice as Niki. Maria and I will get there one day, maybe. So for those that don't know, Maria is my best friend, and her and Niki are my admins. And so we have a group chat, and it's so funny because when there's some situation going on, it's the whole like good versus evil on my shoulder. And Maria's like, nah, fuck those guys. Like, no, kick them. I'll boot them right now. Let me do it. And we're like, wait a minute. So then we have, the good versus bad on my shoulder. Niki's always the good. Maria's always the bad. And it's okay. Like, and I'm the happy medium. I sway each way all the time. But then, of course, when we can't figure out.
And I'm like, maybe they didn't mean it like that. They can't have meant it like that.
Yeah. And then Maria's like, out. Boot him. And then when we can't come to a conclusion, we will just go, and then we have to phone a friend, which is Alexander, which is my husband.
I was gonna say, what would Alex say?
Yes, we always pull, and he's always the voice of reason, which is really annoying. It's one thing to be extremely intelligent all the time. So like, he's always the smartest person in the room is what I say, which means I'm in the room all the time, who is not always the smartest person in that room. But then to also be like emotionally intelligent, I feel all my feelings, but he also thinks about his feelings, which I don't always do. So it's really nice to have that. But all that to say is that like, it's really great to kind of have you on the team in that capacity. I hope that you and Maria are willing to stay on as long as you'll ever want to. I'll have you the whole time because I think that we make a really great team. But you really,
Balance.
yes, you really are such deep down such a great human. And so
Thank you.
I also know that, you personally have been through your own, bunch of trauma in your life. And so I'm not asking you to get into that, but I know that you've had quite a few hard experiences throughout your lifetime. And so, Alex's family has also been through quite a bit of trauma and loss as well. And I think that when people go through that sort of loss, that sort of trauma, those hard things, it takes your brain and it changes its chemistry a little bit to where now, there are things that you just view things differently. Things just aren't worth your energy. I don't have that affliction yet. I still care about everything all the time, way too much. But you have a really great way of kind of hoping for the best, not assuming the worst. Yes, you have your nerves. Yes, you can be anxious, but at the same time, you do pretty well about worrying about the things that need to be worried about, maybe, and letting other things go. Do you agree with that? Do you think that that kind of trauma and stuff has kind of changed your brain chemistry in a way that has helped you caring about the small details that maybe that matters in bag making, and then maybe also not caring about some of the details that you just know that don't matter? And the same thing with dealing with the community. Do you just think that it's changed your brain in that way?
I guess I've never really thought about it like that. I don't know. I, that's a fair that's a fair assessment, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I've
So
never really given that thought. So I'm really pretty much an open book about things. I'm guessing the trauma that you're speaking of. Um, I was the only child of a single mom, and she died when I was 3. And so when I really think about it, I was an orphan, which is weird to me because I grew up in a family. I was raised by my aunt and uncle, who became my mom and dad, and their kids became my siblings. Went from an only child to the youngest of 4, like in a heartbeat.
mm-hmm.
Um, and that really did shape a lot of who I am. Like I have a butterfly in my logo, and that's from my mom. My first mom. I have 2 moms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's for my first mom. So I mean, I guess that start has really shaped who I am. Um, but I've never really thought about it in the context of how I view details and things.
So Alex's family lost members of his family, uh, 3 very tragic deaths, essentially. And 2 of them were very close together, and 1 was pretty far after that. But the living members of the family have, had to experience those. And so when we get together as a family with them, so there's my family who didn't really experience that sort of harsh, sudden loss and trauma in those ways. We care about all of it too much. Everyone fights and argues all the time. There's no water under the bridge. None, ever. But when we got together with Alex's family, nobody cared about all that stuff. It was what does it matter? It's not the important part. The important part is to be here, be here now, care about what matters. And so
Yeah.
what I've noticed with his family is that their brain chemistry just kind of changed in that way where it's I'm not going to waste my energy on that because I'd rather spend my energy enjoying the time that I have with you because I know how important it is. And so I, again, haven't been able to get myself to have that that path yet, but I want to, but I see it in them and I admire it so much, although I understand the cost of what
Yeah.
created that. And so for you, I kind of I think having that knowledge, and I could be totally wrong on that. I just have this view of people who kind of experience it, some sort of major loss. I met someone a week ago and we were at a friend's party for their housewarming party. And I met one of their relatives, and this relative had been in jail for 20 years, and she comes out, and so it was a family with 4 siblings, and 2 siblings died. One was in jail for 20 years, and we were friends with the 4th one, right? And so, but we talked to her, and she's like, I don't care about little things like that. Like those little things about people that might bother you and cause Maria and I to be like, nah, they're the worst, causes somebody like you to maybe think, well, one, I don't really care if they feel one type of way. It doesn't really matter to me. But also maybe they're not thinking the worst all the time. And I don't know, that might be like a kind of way out there question about the whole trauma thing. But I wasn't trying to pull that out of you if you weren't willing to share that. But I think I've thought about that, about you a lot, about if you feel like it had kind of shaped, how much you care about this one seam, or what.
Yeah, I think so. I had that loss, and then another really defining thing in that shaped my early childhood and put me on a completely different path. And then once I was an adult and married, uh, infertility and pregnancy loss, that redefined me entirely.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Um, that put me on an entirely different path as well. And so I guess I have a very soft heart. And so I think that part of that is me choosing to believe the best in people, um, until they prove me wrong.
And infertility is tough too, because you're old enough to understand.
Mm.
You may not be able to fully comprehend the level of grief that you're experiencing, but you're able to understand the fact, at least the
Yeah,
knowledge, the loss.
I'm on the whole other side of that now.
Yeah.
I'm like fully menopausal, good times. If you think mom brain or pregnancy brain is a thing, wait till menopause brain, because like it all goes out the window. Like
I've heard
I can't,
some horror stories from friends.
yeah, I can't even, I just, words elude me at times. I'm surprised I haven't stumbled too bad in this. I'll be like
I
asking my
probably
daughter,
said
can you
about,
get the blue drink? Can you get me a blue drink out of the fridge? And she's like, about right? Yeah, I can get you one. Yeah, you knew what I wanted. I just, words will just completely escape.
Yeah, you know me. I've done it too many times where like, first of all, I'm really bad at typing too, in that like I will be typing something in my brain, but I will hear something somewhere else and I will type that. I did it this morning. I was trying to type the word orders, and Trenton was in the background playing VR, and he said arrows. So I said the number of arrows, typing, sent the message completely, and then see that I said that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't mean that. I meant a completely different, unrelated word, but I do that all the time.
I've done that too. But
It's
it's
pretty
weird
bad.
when you can go through your whole adulthood not doing that, and then all of a sudden,
That's true.
where did my brain go?
Maybe menopause will fix me. Maybe that's what I have going for me. I should not hold my breath though. Okay.
I'm gonna hope that for you.
So one thing that I wanted to talk about was that, you're so influential. We already know you're very influential in the community. We learned in episode 1 that you were the person that pushed Lauren to start her YouTube channel. We learned in this episode, for those that don't know, that you were the one that really, you were my kind of deciding factor for releasing my first pattern, the Gaia. And so do you, I'm sure there's more people that you have had this influence. You're very supportive of people behind the scenes in their business ventures. You're like, yeah, go girl, you can do it. We love it for you. And, you're very gung-ho, very vocal. You're not afraid to comment like, you got this, you can do it. Very, very supportive. With that being said, Do you feel, and so I was talking with Alex last night, trying to figure out how to preface this question without coming across any other way other than the words that I say and what I mean, and I don't intend anything else with the meaning, but do you feel any resentment or regret about maybe, like, do you feel that you maybe had ideas or intentions that you didn't follow through with? And do you wish that you would have had a Niki on your side of things to be like, yeah, go girl, you can do it?
My brain is not wired that way.
Good. I
Uh,
I just was wondering because
I
I know how supportive you've been with everyone else.
I don't I've said it before and people argue with this with me, but I don't have an original idea in my brain. I I make things, but I don't feel that I create things.
Okay.
Like I'm following someone else's pattern. It's not really in me to come up with a design or it's just like you influenced me to get my 3D printer that's right back here. And
I
I
influence quite a few people. I love it.
and that's where I'm like, you should be getting something from that because how many of those printers have you sold?
Who knows? Too
And
many.
that's where I'm like you need to you deserve something for that. Anyway, and that's why I was like, Lauren, you do these videos on Facebook, but if you did them on YouTube, you might make some money off of it. Why
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but I no, I don't have any resentment, and I because that's just not to say that the resentment, I do have resentment within me at times for different things, but as far as like wishing that had been me, no,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not who I am. That's not my skill set. That's not no.
I think that I meant more about like kind of internal resentment. Like, do you wish that you would have done something similar? Or I guess, was there an opportunity where you wish you would have had somebody like you on your team rooting you on? Even if you say you don't have any original thoughts or anything like that, you
Oh,
know?
no, I don't think so. I didn't finish my thought about the printer.
Okay,
Like
sorry.
I would love, no, I don't know why. It just came to me. I would love to like come up with something that I could print that I could make that be more than just like a toy maker. But I have no original idea in my head. Like I can't come up with something that isn't what somebody else already made.
I think that you could with time. And I think that sometimes there's just, we just need to see the right problem to find a solution. And sometimes you don't really realize that it's an original thought, but it is. But
Maybe someday I'll get there. I don't know. I see people
that's,
printing things and I would like, oh, why couldn't I think of that? Nope, not me.
we ebb and flow with our printer, and that we'll print a bunch of fun things, and then we'll print a bunch of functional things, and then we'll try to print new things, and then we go back and forth. Um, but you know, we love our printer, and I came up with the little idea for the bobbin holders, and I feel like that really filled my little void of needing to make something. I
Oh,
see
where's
it.
my
Yep. You have made a ton of bags. You have made lots of different ones. Not just you have made a ton of various ones. You've also made a large variety of bags.
Mhm.
And so what do you think it is about yourself, if you had to, that has captured most people's attention when you share your makes?
I do try to get well lit, clear photos.
Okay.
Um,
So the
I have a
presentation.
I have a bunch of stuff stacked, but the place that I take most of my photos is right behind my camera right now. And I think a lot of people would recognize that spot. I've had people comment that oh, I knew that was your bag before I even saw who posted it
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
most of my photos have the
The same
same
background. Hmm.
same look to them. So I
Hmm.
think clear and well lit photos is important, which is why
Okay,
I am in front of the window now too.
that's fair.
So I think well lit photos are important. And also, like, some people are very uh anti interfacing, anti stabilizer, and I am on the complete opposite side. I really want a bag that is going to hold its shape and look like it did when I first made it. We've all, I remember when I first started into bag making, I was going cheap on all the things that are not seen because why spend a bunch of money there when nobody's ever going to see it? And
Hmm.
so this is going to step on some toes, and I don't mean it to step on toes. If it works for you, do it, whatever. But I, bought the headliner foam from Joanne, and I used that as foam interfacing in what tote bag was it? Maybe it was one of Lauren's patterns. I don't remember. I think it was probably one of Lauren's patterns because I wouldn't have come up with a tote bag on my own. Anyway, I used the headliner foam. It looked good. And then it just started to,
Hmm.
with use, kind of crumple in on itself. And it made me sad because it looked so beautiful and perfect and the right shape and everything when I made it. And so over time, I realized that those unseen things really contribute to to the longevity of the product, and also just how it holds its shape, how it looks. I want it to be crisp and I want it to look like when it was made for as long as possible.
Right.
And so I noticed that when I really started to pay attention to interfacing, I kind of leveled up. And
Yeah.
and isn't it the goal to continue to level up?
Yeah. It, you know, you are a big influence on me, or you have been a big influence on me when it comes to structure. Especially I had a lot to learn switching from cork to vinyl, two completely different structures of the base
Hmm.
material. Um, and the patterns I was making with cork didn't really need a ton of structure here and there. And so it was just a switch that I had made as well at the same time that a lot of bag patterns were coming out that were needing more structure. Like the
Yeah.
patterns that are out now need a lot more than what were out 5 years ago. And
Hmm.
so that natural progression, and so, but your bags always look so, like, they look very nice and sturdy is the word that I want to use, but in a way that you see when you're in a store and you see bags, and everything looks so nicely. It's so, it presents really well, but you want it to continue to present really well. And I think that,
Right.
you know, vinyl, the one thing that we have talked about before is that, you're not getting your structure from your materials, you're getting your structure from your interfacing and stabilizer. And that is true for the most part. Like, and you have to kind of alter one to work with the other and vice versa. But you have taught classes on interfacing and stabilizers as well, and you've
Hmm.
compared a bunch of different ones. And
Yeah.
so, what is your favorite stabilizer that you've used of the many that you've tried? Like, do you have a favorite combination or a favorite stabilizer that you use?
So I am always going to err on the side of too much versus not enough. Um, as far as interfacing and structure, sometimes it bites me and I'll be like, oh, I can't even turn that pouch right side out. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, nope, never mind. But more often than not, I'm happy with the structure that I have. And my combination is usually uh Geeky Fuse Cotton Soft from Wizardry. Like that's my number one go-to for almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
For a woven interfacing. And then um usually Thermalam.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually like my sweet spot. There are fleeces that have less structure, but I'm like I said, I'm always gonna go to more. That's
Hmm.
that's my
Yeah.
secret sauce
Yeah.
combination.
I think a lot of people take the, you know, for me, they're like, I don't feel like cutting it out. I don't want to spend the time and the money, but it's like, it's such a small investment of time and money for a long return on that investment. It's so worth it, you know. It's really hard to convince people of that. You know, when
Hmm.
I was designing the Rosie, I made one. I could only bring myself to do one of no interfacing, no stabilizer. And you have used that picture a couple different times to be like, look at
Look,
it.
it
It
makes a
doesn't look
difference.
good. Yeah. And I mean, there's a time and a place for not having interfacing and stabilizer, right? If you're trying to turn out a bunch of Tuesday totes and you just kind of want them to hold some stuff and you don't really care about much more than that, then that's fine. But if you just want to level it up ever so slightly, you can start to add those things here and there. But it's really hard to convince a lot of people to do that. So if you had to just convince them, if you had to have 20 seconds to sell people on interfacing and stabilizing their damn bags, how would you do it?
20 seconds. Oh my gosh, I don't know. But when you just said Tuesday totes, oh, that my heart just went because my promo pictures for the Tuesday tote, I can think of both of them, and didn't inter like I didn't interface the one that has the vinyl on the sides and the main pattern or the
I don't
print in
think
the
I even
middle.
called for it, did I?
You didn't, and so I didn't do it. And
Yeah.
the side panels on that bag, like I did my best to photograph them, but it made me very
Yeah.
sad because
I mean, and
it was not lovely.
no,
It was sad and wilty.
and that's totally fair. So when I used to sell my Tuesday, here's the story of the Tuesday tip. So I keep telling my husband I'm going to have this damn thing on my headstone because it's the thing that keeps haunting me somehow. I love it and it's been done really well for me, but at the same time, it's been the bane of my existence because when I first designed the Tuesday tote, it was because I just wanted a quick and easy tote to make to sell, and I would sell them for $32. And I would use cork. I was using cork exclusively, cork and cotton exclusively, essentially no vinyl, no leather. And so I would just, and cork isn't that bad for a tote on its own. It's going to have a nice structure on its own. Vinyl, not so much. So I would use that. And then I would use fleece plus cotton woven. Cotton, okay. Woven interfacing and fleece on cotton for the top part or the middle part of the Tuesday tote. And I would just use the rulers I had on hand. And that was how I designed the Tuesday tote because I used one, I could easily fold the ruler in half and cut on that specific measurement, like fold the material in half under the ruler. And the other one, I just used the whole ruler as itself. And so that was the basis of the Tuesday tote. So then I wrote this pattern, which I wasn't going to write, but then everybody was like, oh my God, well, you just released it. And I'm like, it's a freaking tote. It's a tote. It's easy to do. Just make the tote. It's fine. But then they said, no, you have to do it. And so I did it and I released it for $4. And it is the most expensive pattern that I have, time-wise, that I've had to invest on my end of customer service to deal with because the amount of people that invest in a $4 pattern that require assistance is amazing to me. But at the time, it was also my second pattern. That was the first time you had tested for me, I believe, was the Tuesday
Hmm.
tote. I think you still haven't made a Gaia, which is fine. We're not shaming you for that, but I find it hilarious. You pushed me so hard to release it and then still have yet to make it. It's fine. It's all right. Don't worry. You'll make it soon now that I've shamed you for it.
I actually no, I was thinking about that earlier. Like I pushed so long for that, and then I was terrified of it, and I'm terrified of that gusset. I'm just
It's not
stop
that
stitching
bad.
that second side of the gusset. I mean, I've done the
So,
Aries. I should be able to do
but
it. But
yeah, rightly terrified because I wrote the Gaia with my preferred seam allowance at the time that it released, which was a
hmm
1/4 inch. It is kind of hard to do all that maneuvering depending on the materials you're using and how thick they are, to catch that seam allowance in that top stitch for the back seam. But you have all kinds of tricks now. You can make it work. You could even bind the sucker on the inside if you really wanted to.
Ooh.
But we got to talk about it, okay? So also, I didn't have my overlay perfected at that point yet. And so it's a very small overlay. It's not, we like nice measurements. I know now now my overlays are just changed in width, but the heights all stay the same. And there's like a really happy measurement that you can design overlays with that I have. And I think, I have to pull it out, but I think it's, what, 5/8? It's, I'm gonna press pause because now I know it when I make it, but I can't pull it off the top of my head. But I'm pretty sure before I check, it's 1 3/4 inches tall, 5/8 on the bottom, 5/8 on the top, 1/2 inch opening. That has to be right because that adds up math wise, right? We have to fact check this because we can't. Yes, that's what it is. Yeah. So for those that don't know, if you'd like to design your own overlay, I have found that to be the happy hunky-dory measurement there. 1 3/4 inches tall.
I do this. I know
What's
you
that?
do the rectangular. You do a
That's how the
rectangular
Gaia
and
is.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I always do a curved
I
because I
like
can
the
top
curved
stitch it
ones.
better.
I like the curved ones, but I cut the rounded corner ones better because I use that rounded corner punch that I have.
And I bought that and I can't do it right. I don't do it right.
We can get you to do it right. It's okay. That's okay. I like the look of the rounded corner better, but I just found this faster and easier to cut, so I switched to this. But all of that to say is that don't use that overlay for the Gaia.
Okay. So I honestly, unless I'm testing a pattern, I use this template.
That's fair.
I had it specially
I
made.
get it. You could print one now.
I could, but I already had this one. I already had this one cut out of
That's fair.
acrylic, so.
So we got completely off topic here. But
Yes, we did. It's okay.
Tuesday tote.
Tuesday tote.
So I
Yes.
released the pattern with essentially, I released it, I wrote it and released it with how I sold it. It was supposed to be this like filler pattern, this like something that you just make a bunch of and sell. I sold mine for $32 a pop. I always used custom fabric, cork, nice handles, all that stuff. Way underpriced it. But
I was
it
going
was
to say that
supposed to
sounds
be
really
basic.
low, but
Sure was, because my customers ate it up. It got on my nerve. I would spend all this time. I would make these really fancy bags and they would all love them. But the way that they ate those Tuesday totes up used to just grind my gears because I'm like, but I work so hard on these other ones. Like them more, please. Ignore the Tuesday totes, but they didn't. They gobbled them up. And so I released a pattern, and the pattern is my best-selling pattern, and it's $4. So, of course, people are like, absolutely, I'm going to invest in that because why not? And then, that's why I released it without that structure. And it does hurt me to my core a little bit now with where I've come when my preference, like I probably would write that with probably foam, as much as people don't want to hear that, like things like I love that more structure now. And most of that has to do with you and your preferences because they just look so much better and they feel better long term. It really does make a difference. And I think that when a lot of people look at your work, they don't realize that most of the reason that they like it so much is because it has a great shape to it. Nothing's flopping, nothing is wrinkled, nothing is like kind of sinking in where it's not supposed to. It looks like it's intended to look, and that has to do with structure. That doesn't have to do with how you sewed and top stitched that seam always. It really matters to add the guts. You got to add the guts.
Yeah.
We have a new segment to the show. I had to come up with a name, so I hope everybody likes names, called the Final Press Pass. And so that is listener questions from the Patreon. And so we have some questions for you. So one of our listeners attended one of the Wizardry Getaways. And she says that while you were there, you were talking a little bit about how you quote unquote improve upon some patterns, essentially saying that you make modifications, you make hacks and things like that to kind of suit your preferences. And so essentially they're asking kind of how you go about that thought process. Like when you start a pattern, or if you read, we know you don't like to read through the pattern too much at first, but when you do glance through,
We don't know that, you do.
you and I know that.
Yes. So my brain, for anybody else, um, I think every designer wants you to read through the instructions before you begin. So you have an idea of where this pattern is taking you. My brain doesn't work like that. When I read instructions, if like I can read a book, whatever, fiction, whatever, and and comprehend what I'm reading. But for some reason, instructions are word soup in my brain if I'm not doing while I read.
Mm-hmm.
So I can skim a pattern, but I don't spend a whole lot of time reading the pattern to know where I'm going. I just have to trust the process because it just doesn't do anything in my brain. So
That's fair.
there's that. For further instruction on why I don't read the pattern before I start.
That's fair. We love that disclaimer. I mean, it's fair. It's totally fair. Some people kind of have that skill and other people don't.
Mhm.
I'm one of those people that I have the skill. I can actively mentally solve the whole pattern in my brain as I read it step by step by step by step.
Nope.
But it also probably comes from having to do that while writing the pattern. So that's probably a developed skill, I'm assuming. I don't know. I never track that until I learned that other people can't do it through testing process. But so you're getting ready to sew this new pattern and you see that like, well, I don't like that. I am not going to do that. When do you make that choice?
When we were talking about testing, you said it's important to test it as written. I didn't always do that. Ask Lauren. I tested one of her patterns and I didn't have enough fabric, so I shortened it and I just went kind of rogue because I didn't really think about that, and now I understand the importance. I've grown as a tester. It's important to do what's written. Anyway, she makes it short now sometimes too because it's cute. But anyways, where was I even going? Oh, deciding when to change things. It depends on what I'm doing. Um, the pattern, the last class that I taught at the Wizardry Getaway, I went way rogue. I
Mm-hmm.
just did. Bringing in the card slots from the Aries, your Aries pack. Because I love those. They're Frank's Red Hot. Put that in everything. Um,
For those that don't know, that little bit is in the pattern. And at the end of every pattern, I have a little funny chat message with somebody. And it was between Maria and Nikki and myself. And it's Nikki who said, it's like Frank's Red Hot, put that on everything or something like that.
yes. And so you should also know that she doesn't tell us that that's what she's doing with this conversation. She'll just ask a question, and I think it's just a normal chat. And then I see it later in the pattern, like, oh, okay. If I choose to download the final
She
version of the
knows
pattern.
before. I did tell you before I did release it to the masses, but it was already the done deal by that point.
I think I just develop a preference. Like, I have, I mean, I've sewn hundreds of different patterns, and I know that maybe when I'm reading how this should be done, I'll be like, I have done it a different way in a different pattern, and I really liked how that came out.
Mm-hmm. So you'll
So if
kind
I'm
of
not, so
mash
that's,
together.
yes, yes, I do a lot of Franken bags, like borrow from this and borrow from that, and
So
yeah.
you probably make it. You probably make that choice pretty early on, essentially just
Mhm.
looking at the pattern and the different elements to it, knowing what you're going to add or take away at that point.
I will say, and again, this is not flattery. It's not intended to be flattery, like said just for
I'll
your
take it
benefit.
though.
But I think that there is like anything that I'm not testing for like another designer or whatever, there is a little bit of knotted threads in pretty much everything that I make.
I see
Like
it and I
whether
love it when I see it.
I know you see it. You see details that I think the average person does not.
I'm
You
aware. It
you're
taxes
like,
me.
oh, zoom in.
Right. That's the thing about testing for me. I know when you didn't measure your rivets, okay? I know I can spot a 1/4 inch zipper seam allowance versus a 3/8 inch seam allowance from a mile away. I can spot it, people. You can't get it past me. You can't.
Nope,
That
nope,
is
you
what it
can't.
is.
And I don't even try, usually. There have been times when I've tested and I like, oh snap, I did that wrong. Can I? Nope, I'm not gonna be able to
If you
continue.
can
I'm gonna
cover it
have to
up, you're in a
seam
good
rip
spot.
that. Nope, I'm gonna have to seam rip that because she will know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's okay though.
But I
But
do a
I
lot
mean,
of Frankenbag. That's what I call it.
that's fair. All right. Next question.
Yes,
Okay. What is your all-time favorite pattern?
probably Rosie.
It's
I,
just so good.
it's so satisfying. I need to make one. I need to make
Mm-hmm.
one.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't
I,
made one in a
as the
good bit.
person, as the person who designed it, I know it's pretty. Probably you would think it probably would be easy for me to say that it's like so good, but I have yet to make another bag that made me as happy as the Rosie has made me to make every single time I make it. There's
Yeah, it
something
just
very satisfying.
there's something very satisfying. There's no other way to say that.
Hmm. What about the favorite thing you've ever made? Can you
Favorite
pinpoint that?
thing I've ever. Oh, it changes often.
That's
Every now
fair.
and then I'll just be like, oh, so I made a Tuesday tote with the weekend, but it was heavily modified for a customer request. Like I said, I don't do customs very often, but this was a custom, and it was with backstitch 626, and so I made it wider so that it could have a laptop sleeve inside of it, and the recess zipper, and like it had all the bells and whistles. It was like
Hmm.
it and when I was scrolling through pictures looking for something the other day and I saw that, I was like, it's a
Hmm.
nice looking
You just kind
bag.
of put all the pieces together and then ended up with something you were really happy with, which is,
Yeah.
you know, always the goal
Yeah.
for sure. And sometimes it can be as simple as what I like to call the dreaded Tuesday tote. You know, even a Tuesday tote. A lot of people love it. They're going to be so shocked that they hear how much I kind of despise it a little bit.
Yeah.
um,
You shouldn't.
how many times have you been to Disney?
Oh, okay. So my daughter has been, that's funny. Did somebody really ask that?
Yeah, there's another Disney question as well.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I went once when I was 8 years old. I went once with my husband on near our second anniversary. And then when my daughter was 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 10 times.
Wow. Okay, so
And
what's your favorite thing at Disney?
that's a combination of Disneyland and Disney World.
Okay, so
I would
a
have to take more
Disney
brain
theme
power.
park.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so what's your
And
favorite thing at Disney?
what's my favorite thing? So, I think I didn't become like a Disney adult really until the trip when my daughter was 4. It just became very magical. Like the things that they say and do, like her name was embroidered on the back of her ears. I didn't embroider then. I got them at Disney. And so every time she would go for a character picture, somebody would straighten her ears and they would see her name on the back of her ears and they would, oh, Princess Emma. And she would be like, how does this princess know my
That's
name?
so sweet. I didn't know
And
that they do that.
and it was just like experiencing it with her at 4 years old. at 2 years old, that trip was a train wreck. Um,
For sure. For sure.
that trip was an absolute train wreck. But at 4 years old, it became magical, and that magic like just kind of infected how I feel about it. I guess maybe I'm not like an average Disney adult, and most of what I make is in the Disney niche as
Hmm.
far as the bags that I make because that's what my customer base goes for.
Right. Yeah.
I
That's your
mean,
niche. So that's what they're
that's
there
my
for
niche,
sure.
and that yeah, and so every now and then I'll get like somebody say, "Do you have anything that's not Disney?" And I'm like, "I guess maybe you're new here because that's
Yeah, I feel
kind
like
of what
people
I
ask the
do."
same thing about me, but when it comes to Lord of the Rings, it's opposite for sure.
Yeah.
But okay, next question. So you have taught at Lauren's last year. You did. I was there for that in February. The classic zip
Yes.
around wallet. I just went because I just wanted to be a student for once, and I wanted to enjoy that aspect. And it was an amazing time. You did such a great job. Truly, we were all so excited for you. It was amazing, well deserved, and the feedback was phenomenal. And so you're doing this class again, but this time you're doing a long weekend and you're splitting it up into two classes, right? And
Yes.
so when are those classes again? February, March, something like that? March. I don't know.
March. It's like the last weekend of March, I believe. Like I
Okay.
think 27th and 28th is one class, and then 29th and 30th is the other. I think it's Friday,
Yes.
Saturday, and
Hmm.
then Sunday, Monday.
Yes. Um, so one of the questions was for that, are you going to include the mini this time?
That has not come up yet. Um,
Now it has.
I might have to talk to Lauren. She just did the listings yesterday, so
She's
um,
so flexible, you know.
I
You
know
just
she
ask
is.
her.
So the way that I did the class last time, I pre-cut everything to do one wallet, and then I cut an interfacing set to do the second wallet. For anybody that finished the first one early and wanted to do another
Mhm.
one with their own choice of materials. So maybe it could be a situation like that, like the second wallet once you have the because the way that the designer has done that wallet, it is written for all quilt cotton lining with minimal interfacing to reduce bulk. Um, the Sew Whatever Studio is industrial machines. Industrial
Mhm.
machines do not love uninterfaced quilt cotton. There's just too much
No.
power, too much pull,
Too big
um,
of needles.
and too big of needles. And so I had to, when I decided to teach that class at the Sew Whatever Studio, I had to rework the lining to be made with
Mhm.
waterproof or water resistant canvas. That wasn't chosen by the designer because of the bulk. So I had to tweak the way it was done. I can't be done the exact way as it's written because then you would
Yeah.
have a wallet that would be so thick inside that you wouldn't even be able to put anything. I think that I would, long way to get to the answer. I think that I would probably teach the wallet as the original, and then once you know how to do that, we can we can cut the interfacing down to be the right size to do the mini, and I could probably help somebody with that as their second.
So it was at this point in the episode in which we had a couple technical difficulties. We actually had a couple technical difficulties, as well as a brain fart and a cat interruption throughout the whole episode. But at this point, it was out of my control. And so when I went to edit the episode, I heard a lot of like technical garbling and things like that that's just impossible to edit out. So we ended up having to jump back on today and re-record this last segment. So we have one more listener question to get through, in addition to the the final press pass segment, and then we'll get into the affirmation. So sorry for the interruption, but it is what it is, and we're trying our best. So for the final question, it was asking about your experience using your domestic machine to sew bags, as far as how you were able to achieve such good quality as far as stitching, how did you prevent skip stitches, bulk reduction, kind of all those things, because it never looked like you used a domestic, but you did, and just people just couldn't believe it. So do you have any suggestions on that front?
So a lot of it is knowing and understanding the limitations of your machine. I pushed mine right up to the edge often, and there were times that I did push it over the edge and had the dreaded skip stitch. So that is, both of my machines have a needle stuck on the magnet on the machine. Yes, I magnets. uh, and so there are videos out there on how you use a needle and thread to go in behind the stitch, and I tie a little knot and then bury the knot, that will fix the skipped stitch, because there's only so many times that you can seam rip and start over. I will sometimes, and I know you don't like this one, but I will sometimes use a mallet and smush something down a little bit if it's a particularly thick area that I know is going to give trouble. Um, One thing that I think really makes it stand out is using the heaviest thread that your machine will allow. I was able to get my domestic machine to work with a Tex 45 thread. Not everybody can do that. Not every machine will take that, but I was able to find a good sweet spot with mine. When you go uh, between different thread weights, that does require tension adjustment. If you think about pulling the thread through a hole, the larger it is, the more you're going to have to, the more force it's going to take to pull. So you do need to increase the tension when you're going with a increase, right? Yes. Yes. Increase tension. Yes. Tighten the tension. When you're going to a heavier weight of thread. That also translates with the bobbin tension as well. I personally was able to get it to work with both the top thread and the bobbin. But that does require bobbin tension adjustment.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us, I know personally, when I was learning to sew, don't touch the bobbin tension. And I was able to learn a little bit more about it and feel a bit more comfortable. There is a way with some bobbin casings, I guess not all, that you can do what's called a drop test. And so you put the bobbin in the casing and you hold the loose thread and give it a little shake, and it should drop just a couple of inches. If it doesn't move at all, then you need to loosen the tension. If it drops really quickly, then you need to tighten it a little bit. And so I was able to find that sweet spot, and that allowed me to use a heavier thread, which I think was a big part of why people thought that I was using an industrial, when I didn't start using an industrial until last year.
Right. Yeah. So the thread is your actual stitching. This is when you're stitching. It seems like such a normal part of sewing. You don't need to think about it. But when you think about when you're bag making, the technical part of stitching really matters, because you have so many various layers of thicknesses and densities to deal with, and then also thread weight. We don't typically use heavier weight threads when we're doing something like quilting or sewing a really thin material. It's just not necessary. But the second that you up the thread, you have to up the tension, you have to up the needle size, you have to do all those things to accommodate the various threads you're using and the bulknesses. So you had mentioned, I'm not a big fan of the malleting, hammering your seams. So yes and no. So I understand the importance of compressing the seam, because half the time when you're sewing on a domestic, it's not so much the thickness of the amount of layers, it's the height of the layers. So when you're malleting and you're hammering it down, you're compressing it. But you have to remember too, if your machine just isn't strong enough and your needle isn't strong enough to go through the sheer amount of layers, a mallet and a hammer is not going to remove that. Hence where bulk reduction comes into play. Your first line of defense should be bulk reduction. If you can't do it any further than what you've done, your mallet comes into play. So it's definitely a double like sided thing. You kind of need to figure out what works best. There's just that misconception that bothered me of like people being like, we just hammer your seam and you'll be good to go. And it's like, that's not true. Sometimes yes, always no. But for sure. And so like my domestic, I don't have a bobbin casing that comes out of the machine. I manually drop my bobbin into my domestic. And so the drop test is really hard. And so the thing about bobbin tension also is that you have to have such a slight hand, minor adjustments because it's so sensitive.
Yes,
especially
it is
when you're
tiny
using
bits.
The tiniest turn, unlike the top one where you crank that sucker, but on a bobbin you have to have like literally like a certain minimal degree of a rotation that you need to do with your little screwdriver. But so there's a bajillion domestic machines out there, and every single one is different. So it's really hard to know. And so that's when it comes to play with understanding the limitations of your machine.
Yeah.
We talk about that a lot when a pattern is released. And we have to say, is it domestic friendly? Well, I mean, yes and no. It is domestic friendly if you're using a domestic and you're making the right choices for your machine. Most of the time. There are times where some just aren't domestic friendly.
Yes. And you mentioned needle, and that is one thing. I was able to find a needle that really, it stays in my domestic machine all the time. I think I would have to look it up, but I think it's a Schmetz Chrome Professional size 16, I think. And that that really went a long way as far as being able to continue using my domestic.
Yes. And I think so. The way that I kind of describe machines and stuff, people, always want to know, do I need it in industrial or can I be okay with a domestic? It's a huge financial and space investment with an industrial. And you can find limits with every machine that you have. And you just have to know if you're capable of working within those limitations.
Right.
So yes, you can make many bags like Niki has, like I have, for years with a domestic and totally get by. Is it the right tool for bag making? I would debate that. Can it be used as a tool for bag making? Absolutely. So don't let it discourage you. There's plenty of ways to, as we have learned, to make up for some of the shortcomings of a domestic while sewing bags, such as fixing skip stitches, doing bulk reduction, and things like that. So absolutely. So the last part of the final press pass is something that Nico suggested that we do, which is have the guests ask me a question, which I wasn't sure about because I'm like, well, I mean, okay, then fine. So do you have a question for me?
So I kind of know the answer to this, but that's because I am privy to some of the backstage side of things. But how long does it take on average for you to design a new pattern? Because
About 4 months. Yeah. It takes from like the first time I make the first prototype, like essentially within like the third prototype, I have the general shell. That general shell is way different than the finished bag, but the bones are there. But then from that point till pattern release is, I think, the minimum 4 months if we had to guess. That track?
That tracks.
Yeah. As I had a meeting with my tax lady yesterday morning, and she's like, have you considered like sitting down for like a month and a half and like banging out like 10 patterns or something like that? And I'm like, each one. I was just asked this question yesterday, so that's how I have a quick answer. It's like each one takes me like 4 months. It's literally impossible for me to bang out like 10 patterns in a month and a half. That would be nice. That would be nice, but
you might be able to do it, but it wouldn't be a Shannon pattern.
So it's funny that you say that because last night Alex and I we brought up that Ket had said that in the interview, in the call, and he was like, you could maybe sit down for like a month and like create like a shell pattern, and then change it in many different ways and then release them as different patterns. And I was like, I would never do that. I would never do that. I had every aghast. I had
Do
every
you even
opportunity
know
to do that
me?
with the Pisces pack. Right. I was like, that's what the Pisces pack is. And then I sold it as one. So obviously I would never do that. So that wraps up the final press pass. But the last segment is the kind of affirmations one, where we, I love my little sayings. Sometimes they're serious, sometimes they're funny. One of my favorites is "We'll burn that bridge when we get to it." So do you have anything you would like to leave for our listeners that would give them words of encouragement, or just something to keep them going, or something to keep in mind while they sew?
So this is kind of silly, but I just feel like most things are figure outable. Like it doesn't matter how bad you've messed up, you can probably figure it out. And especially the first time you're sewing through something, there's going to be hiccups in the road, but you've got this. Like keep
Mm-hmm.
just keep at it. Take it a little bit at a time and you've got it.
Right. Like if you have to redo a specific part of the bag, then it's okay just to redo it. You've learned what not to do, and just keep going with the bag. Don't give up at that point. Don't assume that the rest of the bag is going to go to shit. It'll probably work out. So that's great. That's great. Well, I know I said this the other day, but I have to say it again because ain't nobody going to hear that one. Is that I wanted to say thank you so much for joining me not only once but twice, and agreeing to be a part of this. I know that. I mean, I'm assuming, just because I know you well, that it was not your first inclination to agree that maybe you deserved to be in this space, or that you deserved a spotlight or anything like that. And I can't tell you, other than the ways that I have tried to tell you over the years, of how much I appreciate you. I value your input. I value your opinion, and you deserve to be here almost more than anybody else. And so thank you so much. And I found a way to work it in really nicely last time, but I didn't this time. So I'm just going to throw it out there, is that for those that don't know, if you got the Adina pattern, there is a couple, 3 little remarks in the pattern about, how nice this person was, who was named after, and all that stuff. I like to include kind of little dedications in my patterns. And so the Adina was named after Niki. That is her given name. It's a very beautiful name, and I hope that I did it justice with the Adina. I think the Adina is a little bit more stubborn than you are, but that's okay. But yeah, yes.
Well,
thank you so much again, of course, and until next time.
Thank you.
I have found this to be pretty tough and nerve-wracking to interview my friends, not so much because I'm uncomfortable talking with them, but because to me, I find it to be difficult to handle a little bit, I guess the word, the stress, to manage the pressure of having this friend on who I cherish so deeply, and I don't want to misrepresent them in any way. And so that's my goal. I just want to represent people in the way that I see them. And so I really hope that I did that for Niki, because I really do enjoy her as a person, as a friend, as a team member, all those things. And so I hope that, you kind of fell in love with her a little bit like I did. So with all that said, thank you so much for watching or listening to another episode of Splitting Seams. I still can't believe that this thing exists, so it's pretty exciting. Remember that if you would like to support the show, please take a moment to follow, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. It really does make a difference. If you'd like to support the show, you could consider subscribing to the Patreon. There are 2 tiers, again, the $5 tier and the $10 tier. The 5 is simply a support tier, but the $10 tier does get you extra perks, one of which is the Seam Society shoutouts. And so without further ado, let's get into that. Taravon, new achievement. You've unlocked month 2 of your Seams Society subscription. Reward? Isn't this enough? Terry Dooney, thank you so much for your support. Jessica Almendarez, thank you very much. Hua Vang, thanks for supporting this thing. Nicole Hooker, thank you so much. Olivia C., I'll see you at the next bug hunting party in Palia. Stacy K. Brennan, thanks for supporting this woman. All right, that was a stretch. Jabby Sanders, thank you again for your support. Hey Google, what rhymes with Humphrey? Greg Humphrey, thanks for supporting the show. Laurel Zemecki, thanks for supporting a fellow Hobbit. So that wraps up another episode of Splitting Seams. Again, episodes release every other Friday, so I will see you in 2 weeks. Thanks again.